Guess is 4:46, so let's call the meeting to order at 4:46 on Wednesday, June 5th. I guess if we can do introductions, Shane Blazer, Chairman.
Scott Keller, Alderperson.
Adam Tagan, Community Development.
Judah Street Department.
Tom Real, Alderman.
Joe Zerflu.
Dawn Urban, HR.
Alrighty, so the first item of business is discuss, approve to renew health insurance with Aspirus Arise for July 1st, 2019, with the rates being decreased by 2% and the new rates being $741.74 for a single and $1496.74 for a limited family and $2,142.57 for a family plan.
So basically, we received a renewal from Aspirus Arise. They agreed to give us a 2% discount, which is really unheard of. So we are very happy about that. Our claims experience from last year is looking very favorable. We're hopefully, we are very hopeful that that will continue into the future. That would be wonderful. But I'm very pleased with a decrease.
Any other discussion? Thoughts?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the rates, which I just read. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition, say nay. All right, next item for business is discuss or approve to extend our current contract with Lorelei Fuhrer for inspection services. Adam?
So I think most of you are aware we're continuing to struggle through and finding a viable candidate for filling our vacant inspector position. There's some other moving parts in the department that hopefully will see us able to fill the senior inspector and then work towards backfilling. But while that's in process, we've been slowly falling farther and farther behind because of that open position. We have, our existing inspector did pass his commercial building inspection, so that frees up. We had been contacting with Lorelei to do strictly commercial building, but now he can take that on. So what we're asking basically is to retain Lorelei, but basically use her to help us get through some of that backlog. Last I checked, I think we're at around 330 expiring permits, which are permits that are over 6 months old. So that's obviously a lot of them. Some of them are probably relatively quick to get caught up on, like a fence, but there still needs to, we'd like to chip away at that. So if we do get back up to full staff, we're not immediately behind the 8 ball. So I did ask for a revised proposal from Lorelei based on that transition from just commercial building to more of an hourly basis. So her proposal is basically $50 per hour. We're asking that to approve that contract not to exceed 16 hours per week. So that would hopefully allow us, and then the expectation is that in that 16 hours that hopefully being able to cover right around 20 inspections per week. So that won't necessarily mean we're getting rid of 20 permits per week, but ideally we're getting at least caught up and getting rid of some of them at that rate. So that is the request before you. Have any answer any questions?
Anyone else have anything? That's what we have been paying currently?
No, but we had been doing a lump sum of 1,500, so this would be increase in what we're paying. We still are, however, able to cover it because we still have that vacant position. So we're still we have excess funds, if you want to look at it that way,
Right.
in the
Yep.
department, so this wouldn't be a new budget request.
Okay. And do we have to watch the hours? But under 600 or whatever?
I think that she can only commit to 16 hours.
That's what
is
she's
that
willing
true?
to commit to. Yeah.
But we will watch the hours, but
I
I
didn't
don't
know
think
if
she
there
has, I don't think she has more than that to give.
I meant for total hours?
LTE.
Yeah, LTE kind of thing, or
Oh.
under the 600 hours, or?
So since she's a contractor.
Oh, yeah, that's
We
right.
won't have to worry about that?
That's right. Yep. Sounds good. I'll make a motion to approve the contract for $50 an hour for 16 hours per week.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Say nay. All right, next item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Speak for you. Discussion and approval of a revised return to work policy that incorporates the revised return to work process.
Okay, so this is the second attachment in your HR packets. And basically what I did, last time we had approved the injury reporting and workers' comp policy. I had wanted the language to remain consistent, so I simply copied the policy from, the language from the policy that was approved into this policy. And that's the highlighted portion that indicates that employees are required to present a return to work form signed by the employee's physician to HR prior to returning to work in any capacity. HR will then review the form, seek clarification if necessary, and authorize the return to work in writing. Employees are not allowed to return to work prior to being cleared in writing by HR. So, and the rest of that, any changes that I made have been highlighted in yellow. So under procedures for number 1, so I added clarifying language that would include if the modified work, if the injury occurred during the course of employment. Procedures number 2, I did add, because we currently are using this process, that all time away from work is tracked as family medical leave. We're doing that, but it wasn't part of the policy. I thought we should add that for clarification purposes, so everyone is aware. Let's see here. And number 3, I added that the supervisor will ensure that the duties are within the employee's work restrictions and monitor his or her progress. I just wanted to clarify that language and ensure that the city is complying with the work restrictions. I just want it to be very clear, and I guess the number 1 goal here is to really protect the employee. So we're not looking at a re-injury when employees return to work. So I guess that's the real purpose of that.
Anyone have any questions?
I do.
Mr. Bemke?
So, workers' comp counts against your family medical leave?
It's tracked with it, yes. Now, I think the times that we've done that this year so far have been once. Generally, the workers' comp that we have has not been long-standing this year. It's, I think I maybe hurt myself at work and there's one treatment maybe. It's usually not missed time. But yes, technically, we track it with family leave.
But does it count against your family medical leave?
Against the federal family leave, that up to 12 weeks, not against the state family leave.
Okay.
Anyone else? Or do you have any more, Jay?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joe?
Was it that way prior?
We were always doing it that way, but it wasn't in writing. And I thought that truly, and we were giving employees notice of that, but it really should be in writing. If that's our process that we are using, it really should be included in the policy.
So, not to put you on the spot, but before you were here, this practice was, this was a practice that,
I believe so. I can't speak to how
Right.
my predecessor was tracking family leaves and workers' comp. I believe so.
but once this occurs, the employee will be notified, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And I guess you're the expert on, but so, like legally, the state only gives you 6 weeks, right, of family leave?
Depending on what it is. So
Okay.
it's 2 weeks for your own injury,
Okay.
2 weeks for a family member, and 6 weeks for the birth of a child, followed then by 2 weeks, if you look at it, the birth, and then 2 weeks to care for the baby as a family member, so I guess up to 8 weeks.
'Cause I
in
know
that
a-
circumstance.
I know a lot of times it's practice to have federal and state run concurrently.
It normally does. There's a state statute that does not allow employers
Okay.
to track state time with workers' comp.
Okay. But it's legal federally.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Committee's wishes?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to accept the return to work policy that incorporates the revised return to work process.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the policy, the revised policy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say nay. And discuss approval of a termination policy. Review.
All right, so this is the last attachment in your packet, and I had changed the name to incorporate separation of employment. I think that better describes resignations, retirements, terminations. I think that better describes or encompasses all the different types of separation one may have. This is actually a follow-up from the referral to have something in writing that request, the advance notice for when people retire of 30 days. I thought it would be beneficial to put a policy, that just outlines resignation, retirement, termination, the processes that we use and the procedures that we go through when someone gives resignation or someone is retiring. The 30-day portion is actually on page 2, and it is 3.2, item A and B. That is where the 30 days is discussed. I also do have a comment, since we've just started discussing this at the HR committee level. We have been receiving that notice. So because we, I think, talked about it and brought it to individuals' attention, we have been receiving more notice for retirements, which is a good thing. Yeah, and the premise here is that it just allows us a little bit more time to actively recruit and select for the replacement, so we're not so far behind.
So are we actively recruiting replacements for people that have submitted notice, or are we not
Yes.
that far ahead?
No, actually, we are.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, we
So we're
are.
taking advantage of the 30 days?
Yes, we are.
Good.
Absolutely. Yes.
Excellent.
So, and then I thought it was important on 3.4 to include how limited term employees may be handled, because it's a little bit different. Generally, we hire those for a specific task or a specific amount of time. So I do think that, we should have our process in writing, and we generally give them, I believe we give them at least 2 weeks' notice of when their assignment will be ending, so they're able to plan for that. The last page just basically talks about the common practices of what we would go through when an individual leaves employment. Everything from collecting city property to the final paycheck, HR conducting exit interviews, advising of benefits, and if applicable, HR responding to unemployment inquiries. So that's basically the policy.
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Bemke?
Going back to 3.2 in section B, it says, failure to provide the notice could be cause for ineligibility for certain benefits.
Yeah, and I think that's referring to that longevity policy. We'll have to revise that, because currently I believe it just says 2 weeks. It doesn't say 30 days, and I didn't want the longevity policy and this policy to contradict each other.
So that's the only benefit this is referring to?
Yes, now there could be benefits in the future if we have different benefits, but that's the only benefit that I am aware of that this would really impact.
Okay.
Committee members, any?
Motion approved.
I'll second.
So a motion and a second to approve the termination, or we'll call it separation policy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say nay. None. So next item is current job openings. The list isn't getting any smaller.
Actually, I have to remove GIS coordinator. We have made an offer for that position.
Excellent.
Yes. So let's see here. Also, we did make offers for both of our common laborers positions.
Okay.
Let's see here, the other ones. Yes, the other positions are currently open. And all of our positions are on our website, as usual.
Sounds good. Anyone have any questions?
No, I have a comment. I was part of the interviewing for the IT manager position.
Mhm.
And I think it was the police chief that mentioned that he's interviewing for a position, for one of his patrol position. And it seems to me, I think we need to look at, I mean, if you interview a group of people and there's two that stand out, but you have one position, I kind of like to look at hiring, if you know there's going to be a retirement down the road, you almost like to take those two people rather than taking one and the other one goes to another place when you know both of them are high caliber. And it'd be interesting to have us do that, because you know, like say in a year, Fred, Mary, whomever might be retired, or in 6 months, you think they might be retiring. Well, you don't want to give up a good candidate, especially when maybe there's a limited number with employment and so forth to pick from. So it's something to think about as a city. I think it's good to have that idea, especially like on the grounds, you know, things like that.
Mhm.
If it's fire, police, so to allow that. So, I don't know.
And I think that idea, and should that situation occur, that's something you could bring to maybe the committee at that time and say, it's something we might want to consider.
Here's a scenario.
Here's a scenario, we've got this going on, we
Yeah.
have two great candidates, we have an opening coming up.
Mhm.
Can we look at filling that position now and train them and keep that
So
person?
in 6 months, you got a good person in place.
Yeah,
It makes sense.
Yeah.
We would have to make sure, of course, that the funding is available, but it does make sense.
sounds good. So next item is set meeting date, which is always seems to be interesting lately. Anyone have any thoughts? Well, July is gonna be, that first week is July 4th. I know finance has moved to July 9th. I didn't stay for Public Works last night, Tom, did you?
Didn't do anything.
We didn't do anything in the meeting?
Yeah.
It'll be the same time.
On Tuesday?
Yep, the second.
Maybe we can slide
far
into a
as-
5 o'clock spot on the second.
On the second,
Mm-hmm.
let me check, I was going to have our consultant come.
Oh, that's right, we
So,
did,
but let me check with that,
Yep.
because that could work, so July 2nd, you're thinking?
yeah, if,
At
that time,
5, did
5
you
o'clock
say?
at that time, that's right though, because I remember you sent out a request on that one. Which date were you looking at?
I was actually looking at July 9th at
Okay.
4:45, but that's taken.
Yeah,
that's
finance,
okay.
just last night chose 5 o'clock.
Okay, so
Um,
can we set it contingent upon her availability?
Mhm.
Is that all right?
What do you guys think? You guys be around for a second? Or is your 4th already started, Joe?
No,
All right,
I'm here. I don't have all that vacation time you do.
sounds good. So let's plan on the 2nd at 5, and then the consultant will be here for the survey. And we can do that in the first floor conference room. Okay.
Second floor, you said?
First floor.
First floor.
That works.
I'll just watch the agenda.
Anybody have anything else?
No.
Anything burning? All right, last item is adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, we're adjourned.
All right.
Smooth.